I want to wish them, the Speaker, as you have done, a fruitful visit as they follow the proceedings in the Senate, that some of them, if not all of them, will be inspired and aspire one day to join this great house to legislate, represent, and oversight on behalf of the Kenyan people. The students and their teachers, I say welcome. Mr. Speaker, I stand in support of the bill ably moved by the chairman of Labour, the Senator Murgo, on the Heritage and Museums Bill 2023. Speaker, initially I had my own reservations about the bill, but I have consulted the Secretariat and have been properly guided that in fact what a part of this bill seeks to do is to repeal the existing National Museums and Heritage Act of 2006. Because I was wondering, now this bill seeks to establish a national museum, and all my life I've always known that we have had a national museum. In fact, the Speaker, it will be remembered that my predecessor, the former senator of Kitui County, Honorable David Musila, has been serving as the chairman of the National Museum. And so when I saw this, I was wondering then, what was Senator Musila serving in? But now I'm properly guiding the Speaker. The bill also seeks to repeal the National Museums and Heritage Act established in 2006. And for a good reason, Mr. Speaker. The move to repeal the 2006 Act could not come at a better time. In fact, if you ask me, the Speaker, it's long overdue. Because when this Act was passed in 2006, Mr. Speaker, we were operating under a different constitutional dispensation. But after the promulgation of the 2010 new constitutional order, then the Speaker, the Constitution of Kenya 2010, the fourth schedule, part 1, allocates museums, historical monuments of national importance to the national government. So it's a national government function, but you also know, the Speaker, that this is a national government function with a lot of work to be done in the counties. And so there was need to create that synergy between the management of museums at the national level and the operationalization of what goes in museums, the Speaker, at county levels. The Speaker, I am impressed by the provisions of part 2 of the museum, of the Act of the Speaker, which I think for the first time and in a very nice way makes every citizen a trustee of our national heritage. That the Speaker, if or is it when this bill becomes law, it will be the responsibility of every citizen of this country to act responsibly in the preservation and protection of our heritage. The Speaker, I think that has been captured very well in the bill, and I'm in support of it, Mr. Speaker, so that it is not us waiting for other people seated in other offices to protect our heritage, but it is now incumbent upon every Kenyan to act responsibly and ensure that we protect our heritage for the benefit of this current generation and for future generations. Mr. Speaker, I see that the bill assigns roles and responsibilities to the 2 levels of government in part 3, and I am happy with the roles assigned to county governments. Mr. Speaker, where we all come from in our counties, we have artifacts, we have monuments, we have indigenous cultures that are at a threat, Mr. Speaker, of getting extinct. Why? Because as things stand now, it is the responsibility of the national government to make sure that these cultures, indigenous cultures, heritages, monuments in our respective counties are preserved and taken care of. Now, with the passage of this bill, the responsibility is taken where it belongs. That now county governments will also now have to even pass budgets to support their own indigenous cultures, their own monuments, their own artifacts. Mr. Speaker, this is a move in the right direction to ensure that even when it comes to the promotion of our diversity, then counties that share almost similar or even complementing heritages, then they would be able to come up with consortiums to even establish circuits for tourism crisscrossing counties. Mr. Speaker, while speaking about establishment of those circuits for purposes of tourist attractions, Mr. Speaker, yours truly is in the process of bringing to the floor of this House a bill that seeks to establish and entrench regional authorities or regional county regional caucuses to ensure that these economic blocks in the counties then operate within a structure that is recognized by law. Mr. Speaker, this will go a long way in ensuring then that counties have no problems with budgeting for cross-county operations. Mr. Speaker, the bill seeks to ensure that the National Museums of Kenya, now repealed, the act is now repealed by the passage when we pass this bill, that they should be able to identify, acquire, and record ancient and historical and monuments and sites in conjunction with county governments. So that, Mr. Speaker, I will expect that with the passage of this bill, then one of the things that is going to happen is that now there will be a lot of consultation between the National Museums of Kenya, established and operating with its headquarters in Nairobi, and the satellite offices set up in counties to ensure that then there's synergy, that the establishment and identification of monuments and heritages and historical sites, Mr. Speaker, is done smoothly. There are things, Mr. Speaker, that people sitting in Nairobi may not think that they have a lot of value in terms of heritage. But for the people living in those respective counties, those heritages carry a lot of weight in passing their cultures from one generation to the next generation. Mr. Speaker, with those remarks, I wish to support the bill and hope that, Mr. Speaker, once this bill is passed by both houses of Parliament, then it's going to help us in ensuring, Mr. Speaker, that our heritage is protected, to ensure that, Mr. Speaker, counties also continue to play the right role in ensuring that we don't lose our cultures, we don't lose our heritage. Mr. Speaker, with those remarks, I support.
Senator Veronica Maina.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this very important bill that has been brought to the floor of this House. And let me take this opportunity to congratulate the chair of the Labour Committee, Senator Mulgo, for bringing a genius legislation that can be a great avenue, even of income for the counties, Honorable Speaker. The Heritage and Museum Bill. And Honorable Speaker, and before I tackle any other section, I'll jump into section 93 of this bill, proposed legislation, that talks about the National Museum now being empowered to enable a request to be filed to courts and other competent jurisdiction to order for the return of cultural objects that were illegally exported from the territory of the Republic of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, we know very well, before our community and our nation was alert as to the value of some of these artifacts and some of these monuments, architectural works, sculptures, those who were more aware and who came from other jurisdictions of our nation, Honorable Speaker, carted away very important artifacts that are now showcased in other very modern museums and whose value has become very high, Honorable Speaker. I am very pleased as a senator to see that we can finally legislate a piece of law that can help us to extradite or return all those artifacts back to this country, Honorable Speaker. That means it's a very progressive legislation, Honorable Speaker. I have seen for the first time that counties have been recognized as a platform where museums can now be created at county level and where heritage, artifacts, culture can be preserved right at the county level. That means it has gone down to the people. And every county now must take ownership of this legislation. Why, Honorable Speaker? For a long time, I have seen Kenyans trying to express themselves, their culture, their tribe, their ethnic background, and sometimes it has not come out positively because it's been used to divide people. We now have a legislation where culture can be expressed in a positive way. Culture differences can be expressed through establishment of museums at county level, where when a young person visits, if a young Kenyan from diaspora visits Murang'a County, they can tell how the Kikuyu community lived from before 1900, using the concept of a museum that has preserved the culture and the livelihoods of a people. So, Honorable Speaker, I would hope when this legislation is finally enacted, that counties will take advantage of it. And I want to remember when Senate went to Turkana County, Mashinani, Turkana, Senate Mashinani was in Turkana County. I watched the kind of dances that were presented, read the history of those traditional dances, looked at the attire that was being used by the Turkana people. And for a moment, my heart was captivated, especially by the outfits, Honorable Speaker. Because those outfits, if they are not preserved within the context of such a legislation, in another 20, 30 years, they will be replaced by the modern clothing, and we will no longer remember how Turkana culture looked like or how the dances were being done. So, Honorable Speaker, this legislation is a legislation which the Council of Governors should take and ensure that it is implemented to the letter within the county context, Honorable Speaker. And I'm also seeing Senator Ledama has gotten back to his seat in the House, and I'm thinking about the very rich Maasai heritage and culture that has defined and given a brand to the nation of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, we want to see the Narok County. We want to see Kajiado County and all the counties around Maasai land, ensuring that every beadwork that has been done by the Maasai, handmade beadworks, the artifacts we have seen, the shield, the spears that the Maasais use, the rungu that the Maasais use. Even sometimes I see Senator Ledama adorning that rungu, but for the hashai that comes from the sergeant at arms at Senate, that has not been allowed to bring it to the Senate, Honorable Speaker. But we want to see all those artifacts settled in certain very good museums in Narok County, Kajiado County, so that when we are promoting our tourism, we can tell the world that they can come to Kenya and learn exactly how the Maasais have lived for the last 100 years, Honorable Speaker, on a platform on very good museums. I am thinking of some of the museums I have visited across the world as I have had opportunity to travel. And I'm thinking of a museum like Madame Tussauds Museum in UK, in London, Honorable Speaker. If you visit this Madame Tussauds Museum, you will be amazed to see the kind of artifacts they have put in that museum and the kind of income that is being earned through the use of that museum. You will find the likes of the former president of United States of America, Barack Obama, together with the former First Lady, Michelle Obama, very well sculptured there within the Madame Tussauds. You can read the history of the whole of UK and Britain. Following that museum, every year they will show you who was the king in 1895, who moved on to 1900, Honorable Speaker. And if we were to take this concept of museum with the dedication that it should be handled, Honorable Speaker, we would have even visitors streaming in. And we must think of artifacts that have been preserved in other jurisdictions like the Egypt, where the pyramids, people travel, millions of tourists flock Egypt and Cairo to see the pyramids, Honorable Speaker. So we want to see that Fort Jesus gets the kind of branding, the kind of marketing, the kind of know-how that people should have about the Fort Jesus and what it stood for the nation of Kenya. We want to see the Lamu doors, which I see have been preserved and have been recognized here, that any wooden frames and doors that date beyond 1946 should also be identified as artifacts that need preservation. And that artifact, Honorable Speaker, could even be like what you're seeing here in Senate, the art that has been used around the Senate building itself. This is art that is not of today. It's of those years, Honorable Speaker. And we want to see this artifact, Honorable Speaker, preserved so that when our children are born in another 50, 60 years, this legislation will mean something to them and will not only be there to just be viewed and to give the history, it will also be there to earn income for our nation, Honorable Speaker. You know, we have had a heavy tussle with the Council of Governors and Governance when we come to the issue of discussing own-source revenue. This is one of the innovative ways that counties can earn revenue and can attract tourism. When I go to Murang'a County, Honorable Speaker, just the other day we had a very big Kiondo event. The basket that is weaved by the older generation, the age of our mothers, who are bringing up a certain art which we do not have ourselves. We don't have that craft ourselves, Honorable Speaker. We want to see the preservation of such, those baskets being preserved within a museum so that even as that skill is developed, as that skill is evolving, as that skill is changing, we can actually see that the museum has preserved and has shown us what pots were being used in Kenya in 1900, Honorable Speaker. You know, sometimes legislation can be done here, and because it's being presented in very fine English, people may tend to think it is something that is beyond our understanding. It is just a preservation of those items that were used in the kitchens, Honorable Speaker, from 1900 up to 1910 to 2000. What is the development? How have they evolved, Honorable Speaker? And I'm thinking of a small museum in Karen right now, Karen Blixen, where when you tour the house where Karen Blixen, who was one of those first British occupants into Kenya and in Karen area, and the whole of Karen is named after Karen Blixen, you will be shown just the bed where Karen lived, where Karen cooked, where Karen had dinner. It is just those artifacts put together, and you are then able to be shown. A curtain is raised, and you are able to view how life was, how the outfits were. When they went for dinner, what did they wear? That is all that is preserved in that museum. And Honorable Speaker, you know, even the Karen Blixen, they are able to raise some funds even as they retain that museum. Honorable Speaker, when I remember one of the museums I visited in in UK, there is a small museum of a Christian who lived in UK and who wrote this song, Amazing Grace. They have created a whole museum around that song. And out of that museum concept, they have also come up with very interesting paraphernalia, Honorable Speaker, and gifts that can be sold, and that shows how the song Amazing Grace was composed and how it got into our Christian world and into our worship, Honorable Speaker. So I want to highly commend the committee for coming up with such a legislation, and I believe that our national heritage will be safer, Honorable Speaker, when we get hold of this artifact. I have also noted, Honorable Speaker, one of the items that has been recognized as requiring preservation are those vessels which may have sunk or vessels that predate 1940s. If they are found anywhere by our shores or they are recovered anywhere, then, Honorable Speaker, they are also supposed to be preserved for museum purposes and also for learning and also for ensuring that we can see how the technology of yesteryears has been developed up to now, Honorable Speaker. I believe if we implement this very well, the Heritage and Museums Bill, once it turns into law, if we implement it very well, Honorable Speaker, then it's going to support, it will be a framework that will support research in the fields of ancient, historical, scientific, cultural, natural, technological, and human interests, Honorable Speaker. And it will help Kenya to attract many more historians as they visit the country which is the cradle of mankind, and that is the Republic of Kenya. With this legislation, Honorable Speaker, and with its implementation, we should be able to attract more scientists, more researchers, more historians, even more academies, Honorable Speaker, more universities which are doing research or institutes that are interested in research. I highly commend the enactment of this Heritage and Museum Bill, and pray and ask all the senators to support this bill until it turns into law that can transform our counties and that can also help us preserve the culture and the heritage, our rich heritage as Kenyans and as Africans. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Olekina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this timely bill, the National Heritage of Museum Bill 2023. Mr. Speaker, as I support this bill, I just want to note one thing, that it's about time that we all appreciate our diversity, respect each culture, and not subject any culture to second grading. One of the most offensive things in this bill, Mr. Speaker, is that the committee decided that counties will only grade the artifacts that they find in that county as grade 2. Yet the National Museum, or rather the umbrella body with the Director General, will be given the opportunity to grade 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'd like to persuade the Committee of Labor, I believe led by my good friend, Senator Murgor, to do away with the grading aspect of it completely. If you read Section 4, the National Museum of Kenya shall, in consultation with the Cabinet Secretary and the County Executive Committee, member in each county, prescribe a system of grading of places and objects which form part of the national heritage and shall distinguish between grade 1, 2, and 3. I want to persuade the distinguished senator to do away with that aspect. Because how? Who gives you the audacity to be able to come and say that what I consider to be valuable in the Maasai community is now going to be subjected into a second class by a cabinet secretary and an executive committee member of a county government who does not even understand that heritage? Mr. Speaker, I would like to persuade directly the good distinguished senator to do away with that. The other part which I thought was wrong, Mr. Speaker, is on Number 8, the function of county government shall be to C, identify and maintain and manage of grade 2 heritage resources in accordance with this act. Mr. Speaker, the reason why I find that provision to be wrongly placed is because the colonial masters came into this country. They took everything that belonged to us, everything that was important to us. If you go to London, in the museums in London today, Mr. Speaker, you will find Maasai artifacts which are there, which have serious cultural significance to us. But they were all taken to London, where everyone goes in there, they get tickets, and they actually get money. Now, when we have devolved resources in this country, when we have decided now to set up museums across this country, we still subject ourselves to that colonial mentality of taking what is so important to the bullfighter from Kakamega to Nairobi. Why not send people from Nairobi to Kakamega to be able to go and see what is important there? So I really would like to persuade you to completely do away with that system of grading. Who gives the cabinet secretary the knowledge of my culture? Does not understand. Who gives the CC committee member, who is a political appointee, the ability to be able to distinguish what is good and what is wrong? Mr. Speaker, my community, the Maasai community, traded with traders from the Czech Republic who brought in beads. The beads that we wear were traded between the Maasais and traders from the Czech Republic, from the European community. Until today, the algorithm, 99% of all the beads which are sold in this country come from Czech Republic. And when you try to get them from a different country, there are challenges because there was a particular channel which they passed through. So we adapted them, but we have others which are very significant to us. The Pokot have their heritage. The Njems, or Chamus community, who are our sister tribe, have what they value. Mr. Speaker, if you go to the Ataker community, which is a community that I belong to, the Ataker are the Maasais, the Samburu, the Karamajong, the Pokot, the Ethiopians, people from Ethiopia, from South Sudan. We have our heritage, which we have preserved for years. It is upon us. And the only thing that I support with this is that county governments must now set up a particular percentage of their budget to be able to set up museums that will attract people into those counties, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the challenge we have at the moment is that because of this cosmopolitan nature, some of us are afraid that our own counties will be strangers, will be people who will be put in museums. Mr. Speaker, I went to a place in Austria, in a place called Salzburg. And when I got to Salzburg, they have a beautiful museum. And in that museum, they have a short African man like this, who they say this was a human whom we brought from South Africa many years ago. I don't want the Maasai to be put there and they say, you see that lanky fellow? That fellow is from the Maasai community who used to be predominant in this county. And this is why, Mr. Speaker, the other day I was saying, we now need to be creative in this house. We need to be able to ask ourselves, what are we going to do to solve this conflict in borders? You'll find the Maasais, the Kisis, and the Luos are fighting their borders because of land issues. That's why I said, let us change the law on land so that where we know this is where the Maasai reach, the Maasais who live in that place are told, for the sake of preserving your heritage, for the sake of preserving your culture, this land can never be sold. If you want, you can lease this land out, but don't sell it. Because the moment you now sell that land, the change of user come in place. So it is imperative that all of us become cognizant of the things that we're introducing. This heritage, some of our cultures, despite the, sort of like terrorism associated with people encroaching into our lands and territories, people encroaching into our culture. Because I normally stand here and I say that we've been terrorized, stigmatized for many years. You know, despite all that, we have a culture which we believe. So I would like to persuade the distinguished senator to amend the following section before even bringing this bill to a vote. Because if you don't, I will be seeking to remove section 8C, identify and manage of grade 2 heritage resources in accordance with this act. It means that any grade 1, if we are to go with this bill, will be taken to a place where we've created a job for somebody called a director general to be able to collect a lot of resources there, collect all the money. Yet, if there was people who are coming to visit and they say grade A, if they, let's say they decide we are going to charge X amount in grade A, that money will only remain, Madam Speaker, in Nairobi here to be able to pay for the life of other people. So I think what we need to do is very simple. Even on the part where you are recommending that this DG, who is now the head of the administration, can receive money, donations, you know, we need to be specific on that. The donations that are received, if the donations are received because of an artifact that came from Masai land, then that money is directed to the museum in Narok. You know, if that money is from West Pokot, it is sent to West Pokot. If it is from Kakamega, it is sent to Kakamega, so that we can be able to benefit from our own heritage. So that is very, very important. Madam Speaker, I'd like to summarize as follows. I support this bill because of the following. It helps us be able to ensure that we maintain our cultural identity. I like what Madam Speaker said earlier on, that I am proud of my culture. I come into here, into this Senate chambers, adorned with my traditional artifact. I wish I could be allowed to come with my spear. Sometimes I sneak in a rungu. Don't worry. Sometimes I'm able to sneak in. You know, if you go into the archives of here, you will see that sometimes I'm able to sneak in a rungu once in a while. I end up putting our friends in trouble, but hey, such is life. But it's because I'm proud of my culture. I wish we could be in a position where we could even come here with a spear. I'm sure the bullfighter will also come with another artifact that he thinks it's important. And I hope that one day, even a day like this, we can amend your speaker's rules. A day like this, when we are discussing a very important bill like this, all of us should be allowed to come in dressed the way we want. Some, if you want to go the way you want to breathe well, so be it. You know, such is very, very important because it helps us. One of my biggest problems that I'm facing at the moment is that the younger generation, and I'm happy that I can see a few who are in these chambers, will be so disadvantageous in learning about our cultural heritage. You know, before, we used to have our grandparents who would sit down and talk to us about our historical identity, where we come from. And that's why I can stand here and I say that I originally came from Tanzania, which is, there was no border between Kenya and Tanzania. It was just Masai land. But my heritage is mostly from Tanzania coming into this Kenya. I heard today the bullfighter talking about his heritage from Zambia, saying that, you know, maybe he came from there. That just shows that we have our brothers, we have our cousins, we have our sisters in other territories. So what unites us is to find what they find importance and we keep it. Today, if you find a Maasai from Tanzania and a Maasai from Narok, we speak the same language, we value the same things. So it is upon us, Madam Speaker, to be able to say this is what is of importance to us that we want to preserve. Not some cabinet secretary sitting somewhere given power by this act, or some CC of a county sitting there to be able to set up a committee to determine this is of economic value or this is of good heritage. No, it is upon us for us to be able to do that. It is also important, and the reason why I think I like what this bill seems to achieve, apart from those areas that I pointed out, for us to continue educating our children. Our own children, we need to educate them. My grandfather taught me about my culture. That's why I'm very proud of my culture. Today, If, let's say, because of our busy schedules, we don't find time to educate our children, to tell them this is about the Wanga Magere, or this is about Mumbi, you know, this is about Olonana, I think we can be able to either push it, and I was hoping that you would go to that direction, that this should be a subject that can be taught in early primary, so that when the kids are growing up, they can be able to understand. TikTok has messed us up. I mean, you know, let's call a spade a spade. TikTok has messed us up. You know, the internet has messed us up. People now, you'll see young kids insulting their elders. You know, that is uncouth. It was something which was unheard of. You'll see a young boy going there and saying, the bullfighter, F you, do this, whatever. Why? They don't understand the values that we have. These are the same values. The other day we were talking about the late Leonard Mambo Botella, when he was able to use humor to be able to remind us of the importance of our ethics, the importance of our values. You know, he used satire to be able to make us remember. So I think it is important that in this bill, in those local museums, which I fully support, to have a section which is fully educational. In that section also, I think now when we craft up legislation like this, let us also add an internship aspect, where the local schools provide internship for students who are doing history, who are doing culture, to come here and learn. Let them be the tour operators. If you go to a museum in London, you'll find someone who will be your tour guide. And the tour guide will have a detailed perspective of that culture, the struggles, the things that these people have gone through. Now, everything we're doing today, Madam Speaker, is going to determine what the future generation is going to be able to take as valuable. If we do not pass this, fund these museums, the future generation will be lost. The future generation will be looking at the current generation as to what we are reading, TikTok and all that stuff. You know, Madam Speaker, yesterday I was talking to a young girl, and she said, you know, we Gen Zs, the maximum kids we can get are 2. We will not buy houses, because why do we buy houses? The interest rate is 18, 20%. You know, we don't have good salaries. So we'll just exist. You know, how do you just exist? And that is why I'm saying it is about time that we now look within our own means and ask ourselves, what is it that we can do to change our future? The future generation will depend heavily on how we prepare ourselves. If we sit here and we continue just amassing a lot of wealth, lining our own pocket, putting our country into debt, such that the future generation, when they come, they cannot even be able to have an identity. All they'll be doing is working to pay that debt. It will be very wrong. So, Madam Speaker, education is key. Preserving our national heritage is also very key in terms of this act. And I support it fully, but I hope that the distinguished senator will make a few changes, particularly on the role of the Director General, the role of the Cabinet Secretary, and also delete that provision where you're talking about grading of the artifact. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Senators. I have a communication. Honorable Senators, I want to give a communication on a visiting delegation from Kirinyaga High School, Kirinyaga County. I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon visiting students and teachers from Kirinyaga High School, Kirinyaga County. The delegation comprises of 110 students and 4 teachers who are undertaking a study tour to the Senate. Honorable Senators, on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, I extend a warm welcome to the delegation and wish them all the best during their visit. I thank you, and I want to welcome Senator Boni Halone to welcome them and also to contribute to this debate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, it's a pleasure for me to welcome the young people from Kirinyaga to this Senate this afternoon. And I do so because they don't know us very well. You'll be interested to know, young people, that when I was a young doctor, over 30 years ago, I worked at Kerukoya District Hospital, where, amongst other things, we developed the health center. I believe you call it the fathers. We are the ones who fixed it. This is part of the work that we have done for the people of Kenya. And here in the Senate, I am the Senator of Kakamega. Feel most welcome. When you leave, I don't know whether your senator is around. I will come and address you outside so that we know each other better. Madam Speaker, thank you that I got your eye on an opportunity to speak to this very important piece of legislation. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I therefore rise to second the bill on the Heritage and Museums Bill 2023 of Kenya. Mr. Speaker. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I think the best place for me to start in my contribution is where is this law taking us in terms of the economic impact. The impact, Madam Speaker, is that this is the future of tourism in this country. I've heard you speak to it, but let me just borrow one statement from you. You spoke to what you find in the museums in the UK. I've also had an opportunity to go there in those museums, and you cannot imagine, it doesn't matter what time, be it in winter, be it in the summer, when you go to the UK, those museums are always full. They make money from people just visiting their museums. It is my belief that the future of tourism in this country will have to either grow or migrate from the current tourist attraction, which is just simply the white beaches at the coast and the obsession about the big five, which is okay. A leopard is a good thing, an elephant is a good thing, so is the lion and so on and so forth. But inside cultural tourism is a treasure that is going to earn this country billions of dollars never imagined before. And I want to thank my brother, Bishop Racha, Murgor Julius, for this great industry. Madam Speaker, since the distinguished Senate has been organized enough to move us from the national then to the county, allow me, for purposes of being understood very well, to speak to the heritage of my community, the Baluya culture. Madam Speaker, just like your culture of the Kikuyu, we want to speak to these things openly and in distinguished platforms like the one in this Senate, for us to debunk the lie that when you're proud of being a Kikuyu, that when you're proud of being a lawyer, it is tribalism. It's not. Tribalism is negative ethnicity. But positive ethnicity, like what is being provided for in this bill, should be welcomed by all Kenyans who want to break fresh ground for our economy. If you come, Madam Speaker, to our 5 counties of the Luhya Nation, back in Kitale, there will be a museum. In Busia town, there will be a museum. In Bungoma town, there will be a museum. In Mbale town, there will be a museum. And of course, the mother of all the counties, Kakamega County, there'll be a museum in Kakamega. The museum in Kakamega will give our children and our visitors an opportunity to know that just like all the communities of the world, we also have our own heroes. And our heroes are not limited, Madam Speaker, to just the politicians. I wouldn't mind being called a hero myself, but I know my grandfather, Hayati Ihunyalo, Wakaluali Simbwa, Simbwa Shina Simba, was a greater hero than myself. And yet, no record exists of this great man. He teamed up, Madam Speaker, with the other heroes in my community, mainly hero called Lusala from Shinyalu and a hero called Mambire from Shinyalu. And we had epic battles. It's unfortunate that heroism at that time, Madam Speaker, used war as a yardstick to define a hero. And these great heroes that I've mentioned are the ones who drove the pastoralist communities, the Maasais, the Kalenjins. We drove them out of the present day Kakamega. I know the Senator of Kajiado of Narok, I beg your pardon, the district senator from Narok will be happy to know that until just the other day, we were having Maasais in Kakamega. Yes. In fact, the member of parliament, I think, of Gilgoris is, I've forgotten his name. It's just gone away. He left Kakamega just the other day and they went to Transmara and established families there and they have become Maasai. Yes, Sunkuli. It is Sunkuli that you're talking about. Sunkuli has had me. He's a guy, no. He speaks Kilua perfectly nice. Me, I speak a bit of Maasai thanks to my wife, Sakeyen. Sometimes speaks to the children in Maasai. And I tell her, now, what are you doing? You think my children are like bones. My children are not like bones. They are bullfighters, Madam Speaker. So, these heroes that we are talking about, we want to talk about our kingdom. The Wanga kingdom in Kakamega is a well-established kingdom, and these are things that will be on record. We want to talk about our musical artifacts. Not many Kenyans know that whether it is Alliance Girls High School, or it is Shimolatewa Boys High School, or it is whatever kind of school, when you go to traditional songs, when they sing, the songs that win are Luya songs, and those Luya songs come from Kakamega, the center of song and dance. Madam Speaker, it will give us an opportunity, therefore, to preserve our musical artifacts, including the kind of plays that traditionally are practiced by my community, which include, Madam Speaker, but not limited to Shinanda, Madam Speaker, Isukuti, Litungu, Shiriri, Ndebe, Itiolo, name it. The children who the senator of Narok was calling the ones who practice the TikTok culture from my community have no idea what I'm talking about. But if we have this museum, then they'll be properly socialized. Indeed, with this kind of museum in Kakamega, I look forward to us preserving our traditional games, which include wrestling, shicholo, and indeed, bullfighting, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I look forward to our social norms being properly documented and recorded in respect of how traditional weddings are practiced, the burial rites, and yes, the unique circumcision rights. As a doctor, I've practiced across the country, and I'm able to see, just by seeing a patient, I can tell you if you're a Maasai or a Luya because of the way you are circumcised. Yes, this is it. And sometimes when I talk to the Maasai and they tell me why they circumcise in that particular manner, I say how scientific our community was, because it caters for specific times of a man cohabiting with a wife if she's pregnant or not. Madam Speaker, allow me to speak to the benefits and returns on the investment that we are going to make in this bill. This is a bill because of unlocking the tourism potential. It will speak to millions of jobs. As properly articulated by Senator Olekina, you need tour guides, you need drivers, you need the hospitality industry that backs tourism. And these are the jobs that we are going to create. What's more, the returns that will accrue from the gate collections when these tourists pay. Madam Speaker, I want to conclude by speaking to the issue of education and this bill. I see nothing wrong whatsoever if in the 6 counties of the Kikuyu, for example, in the first formative years, children are taught culture as their syllabus. In the 5 counties of the Waluya, children are taught in the first 2 years their culture, their language, and then they expand as they grow to be taught bigger things. I'm not too sure how old you are, Madam Speaker, but people of my age and below, we were actually, as a compulsory requirement, taught vernacular in primary school, primary 1, primary 2, and primary 3. It was only after we were moving into primary 4 that then they started teaching us a bit of Swahili and English. And you find that people, we are so, he had, because he's a younger person, he had to rely on his grandfather. But as it was very easy, because the first 3 years you had to be taught culture. You're being taught in Kluya, Shirala, Tibiri, Vebaka. You are now counting. Madam Speaker, you would then be taught, for example, the vowels. We would be taught the vowels in vernacular. You would be taught ha, he, chi, ho, hu. I mean, Madam Speaker, this is what we are losing because of being obsessed with funny things called English. Yeah? If you want to try, you can either do things. You either get a Luya wife, or who will help you to learn, or alternatively, you behave as if you are clearing your throat. So you start by clearing ha, he, chi, hu. And there is no way a child would miss and fail an exam because you have taught him the vowels in vernacular. When you now, I listen to the way they are teaching the alphabet these days. I have small guys who are still learning those things. And I've lost them now. Where we used to say A, B, C, D, they say A, Ba, Buf. Ha, ha, pa. I don't understand them. So we have to align our education system with the need for us to maintain cultural relevance. With those many remarks, Madam Speaker, I now yield and move that this bill be read a second time. I support.
Thank you, Senator Halwale. I'm not sure whether the ha-he was parliamentary language, but I'll let it pass. Senator Mugeni.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, thank
He's
you.
not moving.
But
We
I
are
don't
in
think,
debate stage.
Yes, I don't.
Senator Boni Halwale,
I think
also
Senator
to
Boni
alert
should
you.
withdraw the
Can you
remarks
withdraw the remarks that you are
concluded
moving?
the debate. You cannot say you are moving.
Senator Mugeni.
Thank you, Senator Mugeni. It's also possible that a student can teach a teacher. Since I'm your teacher on parliamentary practice, I stand corrected. I didn't realize what I had done. If you had heard me at the end, I had said I support strongly. Yes, yes.
Senator Boni will implore on other senators to become seconders of many bills so that your mindset does not always think you are seconding a bill. Thank you. Proceed, Senator Mugeni. What is your clarification, Senator Kenywa?
Madam Speaker, I heard what the majority said, and I just wanted clarification because he sounded like what the kids of today are being taught is not important. When he said they are taught, instead of A, B, C, D, what they are taught, it seemed to me like he said it's not important what they're taught today.
Clarify whether the education today as it is still important. Senator Boni.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I hear the concerns of the Senator of Laikipia. And if I'm old-fashioned, somebody forgive me. I am so confused about the system of education that we have in the country. I actually don't know. This thing called CBC. Madam Chair, I have no idea what it means. In fact, I was joking with my farm manager who told me that he asked his 5-year-old, not 4-year-old daughter to spell her name. She's called Rosalia. And so to spell her name, so the girl said, spelling of my name, Rosalia, is Ro-Sa-Lia. And then I said, look at this CBC. Look at what it is doing to Rosalia. So, much as you guys like CBC, personally I have a lot of reservations about it. We could do it better. I hear in Botswana, it has been done well, and for them to get there, Madam Speaker, they piloted it, I hear, for 10 years. As we got it and applied it in the same tradition that a child learns how to balance himself on a motorbike, and in the afternoon is a boda businessman or businesswoman. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Boni. Senator Okongo Mugeni.
Yes, Madam Speaker, thank you for giving me an opportunity to also make a contribution to this fairly important bill, the Heritage and the Museums Bill of 2023. Madam Speaker, the Swahili say, mwacha mila ni mtumwa. Mwacha mila ni mtumwa. Just, Madam Speaker, if you have traveled around the world, you will realize that many countries have put best effort to preserve their heritage, their culture. When you go to a country like Morocco, you will know that these are Moroccans. In this country, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, if you go to Maasai land, where Senator Oloikina comes from, you will immediately know that these are Maasais. They have preserved their culture. Unfortunately, some of the sub-tribes in this country, including my own, in Kisii, we are forgetting our heritage, we are forgetting our culture. We are losing our identity. You go to Maasai land, I'm sure almost 90% of the Maasai people can speak Maasai. Yes. And they are proud of it. They are proud of that culture. When you drive Narok to Kisii, every Maasai will be carrying a traditional, I don't know what's the significance, but you will find every Maasai as that traditional rungu, Madam Speaker. Tourists who come to Kenya may not know that there's a tribe called Kuria Maybe they know about Kisi because we have Chinkoro. But they may not know, Madam Speaker. You go to a country, if somebody has come to Kenya and visited Masai Mara, they will, most unlikely will they mention Kikuyu sub-tribe or the Kisi sub-tribe. But they will tell you, are you Masai? Because, Madam Speaker, the Masai have been one of the most successful tribes in this country that have retained their heritage, their culture. It's really sad. Even for me, as a father, I feel sorry for myself because our children think that it's very fashionable to speak English and not to speak your local language. I mean, some of us went to school where from class 1 to class 4, Madam Speaker, the language of choice was your ethnic language. We had a book called Ratemo. I don't know, there's nobody here from Kisi. We had a book called Ratemo. And that was the introduction to our class 1, Madam Speaker. Nowadays, unfortunately, and I don't know where the rain started beating us, nowadays the introduction is Kiswahili, English. How I wish we can find room once more, because the Chinese are controlling the world, but they speak Chinese. They're not embarrassed, they're not ashamed of it. You go to Japan, the Japanese still speak Japanese language, but they're still able to be pace setters in technological development. But in this part of the world, we are teaching our children to think that if you speak your ethnic language, then you are primitive. That should not be it, Mr. Speaker. There is a very good reason, Mr. Speaker, why the Almighty God divided us to several tribes, so that we have an identity that we are proud of. Like I'm proud of being an Omogusi. That's why my names, I'm proud if you call me Okongo or Morgan. You can link me to my ethnic group of Omogusi. So I support this bill, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, and from the onset, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that I'm one of those Kenyans who are very proud of my own heritage and my own culture. When we grew up, Madam Speaker, we used to go through an initiation where the community used to be involved. When you are facing circumcision, the celebration was not for one family. The celebration used to be for the entire village. You invite your neighbors, they come, you celebrate, you take the traditional liquor for wazes, and you are moved to the next age group. So I hope, Madam Speaker, that this bill will take us back to the drawing board. We see where the rain started beating us, and we can really be proud and preserve our heritage, our culture. Coming to the museums, you travel to other countries, and you'll be surprised. The queue you will find in a museum, when you go inside, there isn't much. I'm sure we could get more that we can preserve as a country than what you will get out. Even having pictures of our legend. Who will not like to come to this country and they see a photo of Kipchoge Keino put somewhere in a museum, and they will pay money for it? Madam Speaker, I'm told the tourists that we attract to this country is roughly around 2 million, with our population of about 50. Countries in Asia that really have nothing for people to see, like Japan, tourists visiting Japan in a month, not only in a month, is close to 3 million. In a month. I'm told Rwanda, because they have something they call mountain, chimpanzees or something, is ahead of Kenya. Is ahead of Kenya. So this is one way, Madam Speaker, if we create museums in many of our counties, it's one way of attracting tourists. And tourism, we all know, is one of our highest foreign earners for our country. So we need to grow our tourism in order to support our economy. we are going to have a budget of 4.2 trillion, Madam Speaker. If we are serious that budget should be supported by substantially by our local revenue, the way to look at is tourism. The way to look is tourism. If you go to central Kenya, there is a lot that we can learn about Mau Mau. Get us pictures of the likes of Kimathi, Dedan Kimathi, the wife of those people who fought for our independence, Madam Speaker. The weapons, I don't know. Don't we have people, Madam Speaker, in central Kenya who kept rungus that were used to fight Muzungu, or a spear that killed a Muzungu in Nyamira and then the larger Kisi? We are told that there is a man who is called Otenyo. Otenyo speared a Muzungu, whom Kisi had nicknamed Nyaigoti. Speared a Mzungu in Kisi town and killed the guy. And that spear, Madam Speaker, here is kept somewhere by the Kisis. I'm sure if we go to central Kenya, we'll find a lot that can be kept in our museums, and then we interest our visitors who are coming in to visit various counties and see what the various sub-ethnic tribes in Kenya are proud of. That will be part of our culture, and that will be a way of attracting tourists. I've gone to museums in some countries out there, and Madam Speaker, you see barely nothing, but you pay money. Because when you land, the taximan, the guy at the airport will go to great lengths to interest you to visit the museum. But when you go there, there is nothing. How many of us have jetted into Kenya through Jomo Kenyatta, and there is somebody to interest you to visit a park that is just within the city? And how many countries have a park within the city? There is nobody. You are entering Nairobi, there is nobody to interest you and say, visit a national park, which is just in the boundaries of the city. Nobody. You go to Dubai, the moment you land, there are people queuing, trying to interest you. Go to the desert safari, I don't know where. And when you go to desert safari, these are roads, rough roads here. You just see vumbi and nothing. So we need to do a lot. I want to appeal to our CS tourism to tap into the potential that this country has in tourism. And she can bring us a lot of foreign earnings if only she tapped the potential that is there, the untapped potential in the tourism sector. In Kisi, we have soapstone. There is no country in Africa that has the Kisi soapstone. There is none. It's only found in Kisi, Tabaka, in an area called Tabaka. There is no any other in South Mogrango. Even if you go to West Pokot, that stone is not there. Go to Kajiado, it's not there. We go to Muranga, it's not there. It's only found in Kisi, in Africa, no any other country. But many tourists come to Kenya, they go to Masai Mara, full stop. Come back to Nairobi, board a plane, back to Europe. But if we had a desk at the airport that is marketing that industry in Tabaka there, I'm sure we'll get a lot of revenue. And you know, we sell those carvings. When you go to Europe, you'll pay a leg and an arm. We used to do that as arts and crafts when we were young boys in school. Then, Madam Speaker, I'm happy that we are allowing the board to have a full mandate of recruiting the MD for the National Museums of Kenya. But then again, we have a problem that is cropping up in this country. Madam Speaker, even where you create a board like this, I was in a political function where somebody was pleading with the president to assist somebody to be appointed, and where we as members of parliament have passed a law that says recruitment will be competitive and based on merit. You are a lawyer, Madam Speaker. You know the agitation by lawyers preceding the 2010 Constitution. You know what the MOU between Raila Amolo Odinga and President William Ruto is about. It's about fairness. It's about inclusivity. It's about eradicating corruption. So I feel so sad when, as the legislatures, we sit down, we pass a beautiful piece of legislation, we send it to the president signs and says, as a country, we want Kenyans to be picked to sit in a board. We give them power to invite applicants, they interview them, and the one who merits will be appointed. But again, you find us, politicians, again want to go back to the president and say, assist my person to be appointed. That's not nice. That goes contrary to the spirit of our 2010 Constitution. Like now we are doing interviews for IEBC. Madam Speaker, you appointed us through a motion on the floor of this House. We went to NADCO. We spent a lot of time, burned the midnight oil. We brought to the floor a fantastic piece of legislation. And we said, let us appoint people to sit in the panel that will interview commissioners to IBC. Because we don't want to take the country to what was preceding the 2007 elections, where people felt that the appointment of the commissioners was not free, it was not impartial. The people who were picked were not going to preside over a free and fair elections. But still you find politicians are talking and saying, Your Excellency, we want you to appoint for us so and so in IBC. Yet the law has given that task to an independent panel. Madam Speaker, we are sending the wrong message to Kenyans. We are going Kenyans to have it in their heads that one of the players in the political contest is the one appointing the commissioners. We should do public participation, tell Kenyans that we have commissioners in office, let them be given an opportunity without any interference to interview candidates, and let the best, anybody from any of the 47 ethnic tribes, Madam Speaker, can be a chair of IBC and the others can be commissioners. And we run an election that will not invite another 2007 situation in our country. So I hope the board that is proposed in this bill, Madam Speaker, will take the assignment seriously and appoint the managing trustee of the National Museums of Kenya freely, without any form of interference from anybody. That's how we'll create a country, Madam Speaker, that respects rule of law, where power is distributed, where the concept of a limited constitution is entrenched. You know the concept of limited constitution, that power is spread and shared by many institutions. And that even where you have a president, his powers are limited by what is in the constitution or in statutes. If the power to appoint has been given to a panel, the president has got no authority. If power to appoint has been given to the Public Service Commission, let them assert their independence. The Speaker, I sat, Madam Speaker, in Kenya National, in Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission as a chair of the board, interviewed the executive director and 4 assistants without any phone call or anybody attempting to interfere with that assignment. And even if you said no, what will happen? Nobody will kill you, because you are doing a job that has been given to you by the Constitution and by our statutes. So I want to urge, as a way of also having a good heritage as a country, let us have this spread of power, president, ministers, interview panel, independent commissions, so that everybody can have a sense of belonging to this beautiful country called Kenya. So I want to support this bill, Madam Speaker, and hope that once it's enacted, it will go a long way in ensuring that we as Kenyans can again be proud of our heritage, be proud of our culture, so that when I go to West Pokot, I'll find people of West Pokot still proud of their culture, proud of their heritage. Same for me as Omogusi, same for you from Kikuyu, same to my sister here from Kajiado. With those many remarks, Madam Speaker, I support.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Osotsi Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, first of all, I'll start by supporting this bill, the Heritage and Museums Bill 2023. Madam Speaker, this bill actually repeals the National Museums and Heritage Act of 2006 that basically was established to manage all the national museums and the heritage of this country. But as you know, Madam Speaker, the fourth schedule of the Constitution provides that cultural issues, e.g., museums, is one of the devolved functions, and therefore a function that should be handled by our county government. So the current act, Madam Speaker, is offends the Constitution because it doesn't address what is contained in the fourth schedule of our Constitution. So this is a good attempt to try and align the prevailing law on museums and heritage to comply with the Constitution. And Madam Speaker, I know there are many, many other provisions in law which have not been aligned to the Constitution. They are still basically referencing the national government with very little on county government, and yet those functions are either shared between the two levels of government or have been devolved. So this is long overdue. We would like to give a legislative mandate, legal mandate, sorry, to our counties to be able to manage the museums and various assets on national heritage in their respective counties. Madam Speaker, museums and heritage is a very, very important thing to any country. And I think this country has never taken matters of museums and heritage very seriously, because if you visit other countries, especially the capitals of most countries, you realize that there is a lot of investment in museums and heritage. I've just came back about 3 weeks ago from Moscow, and if you walk around Moscow city, almost 90% of Moscow city is museums and heritage sites. They will show you various pieces of heritage across the city. All the streets most of the buildings have been designed to preserve the national heritage. And Madam Speaker, that does a lot to our country. In terms of even tourism, tourist attraction, in terms of even preserving the sovereignty of a country, it is very important, because our youth would want to know how their forefathers lived, what they did, who are they. That information is very important and promotes patriotism in a country. So there is a lot that the country can gain from protecting its heritage, from investing in museums, and basically protecting the assets, the cultural assets, in terms of collecting, documenting, exhibiting the materials, and basically the whole process of managing the artifacts and all that. I think that's very important to any country. If you go to a country, a city like London, you see heritage all over. If you go to the city of Berlin, you see heritage all over. But how much heritage you see in this country? Madam Speaker, we are even destroying buildings of heritage in this country. The other day, Madam Speaker, you heard some people complaining about the renovation to State House. And they were saying, yes, as much as we want modernity, but we must try and protect the heritage of key buildings, key strategic buildings in this country, so that our youth, those who are here and those who will be born many years to come, will remember that this country had an history. This country had people who believed in heritage. So, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I think we need to invest seriously in our heritage. We need to invest seriously in museums, and that can only happen if we take museums and heritage matter seriously. The situation at the moment, Madam Speaker, is not really good for this country, and if we are not careful, we will not have a history for this country, because we will be forgotten. All the things that we have done will be forgotten in this country. So this bill, I think, is an important piece of legislation which we will should all support. Madam Speaker, if you allow me to go through the various parts of this bill, like, for example, Part 3 of the bill, it contains provision related to financial matters, how the funds of the National Museums of Kenya will be sourced, how the annual estimates will be done, and the investment of these funds. Madam Speaker, I think we must find a way of ensuring that the national museums and the heritage side also draw money from the incomes we get from the tourism sector, so that that money that is invested there will be used to develop the museums, will be used to develop the heritage assets, and that thereby creating opportunities for more tourists to visit, and that will be key in the development of this sector. Madam Speaker, Part 4 of the bill provides for the management of national heritage, antiquities, and monuments. I think this is very important, Madam Speaker. You have seen the monuments that we have in this town, in this city, Madam Speaker. Look at the Tomboya monument and many other monuments in this city. They are not properly maintained. In fact, in some cases, they are even defaced, I think this is where the county government of Nairobi needs to do something about it. In other countries, the heritage sites are protected, heavily protected. But if you have like Tom Mboya monument, which is not protected, then what are you trying to say? You are trying to say that yes, we have a monument for Tom Mboya, but because you have not properly protected it, then you expose it to vandalism, and therefore, in the end, actually defacing the name of Tom Mboya. So I think that part 4 helps us in ensuring we have a consistent management of the national heritage and all the assets, including the monument. Part 5 of the bill basically deals with the requirements of obtaining an exploration license before pursuing excavation or surface search operation for buried monument. Madam Speaker, this is very important because we have had cases where foreigners come and carry out exploration quietly and take away vital heritage assets to other countries. That has happened before, and we have had cases even involving the heritage assets for, I think, the second vice president of Kenya, which were taken away, and now Kenya is struggling to get it back. Part 6 of the bill provides for the protected areas and ways of compensation to the owners of the land declared to be a protected area. Madam Speaker, I think this is very important because the Cabinet Secretary will be empowered to issue regulations on how to prohibit or restrict access to an area which is earmarked for the development or use of these important assets. Part 6 of the bill, Madam Speaker, deals with the issue of acquisition, protection, and maintenance of a monument. Even inspection, repairs. I've just made a reference to Tom Mboya monument, which to me it requires protection, maintenance, and repair. Also acquisition, how do you acquire these heritage assets? Guardianship of this monument. I think these are things which will help in protecting these assets. So this